Good morning, Daniel Tokar here with more tools you probably don't have in your workshop, or a blacksmith's dictionary, whichever one you want to go with. Today we're going to do a little bit of sheet metal stuff. So I have an old Dell computer PC case. I like cutting PC cases up for sheet metal because there's some nice heavy gauge sheet metal. So anyway, I'll show you some tools. Get up close here. If you found a tool like that at a flea market for $1, you'd think it was some sort of funny chisel used for something like, I don't know, maybe grooving some babbitt or something. But what these actually are slot and tab sheet metal tools. Back in the day, when cars were made out of heavy gauge sheet metal, and spot welders and other things were not very common in shops, and people actually used lead to blend between two panels in a replacement, that if you cut out a panel on a car, on the car body, you'd actually use solder to blend and shape the patch. They didn't have Bondo, so they didn't have pop rivets. Can you imagine a world without pop rivets? So how the heck did you hold that piece of sheet metal in place until you could get the lead to smooth it out and help hold it together? Well, that's what these little tools are for. Okay, so just to start with, I'm going to cut a little strip off of this computer case. Almost, come on. Okay. And this is good because it's got a cadmium plated side and a black painted side, which will help you see how this works. So, you take the tool and you take a block of wood or a block of lead as a backup piece. Put it there. And you tap it down. And it pierces. And depending on how far you tap it down, it makes, yes, drop it on the floor again. It makes a tab. See how there is a tab, a sheet metal. You know, that's great. And now what you do is you take the piece that you're going to attach that to, and you go in the opposite direction. And if you want this to match up at all, you can actually indicate where it's going to go. And you make another tab on that piece of sheet metal. Now what you do is you take the little piece and you fit it the one tab goes inside the other tab and you align it. And then you have to have something like an anvil or a dolly so that you can tap the two pieces together by pushing the tab and slot into each other's piece. Now this makes a perfectly flat and smooth joint because the slot on one side matches up with the tab on the other, and when you tap it down you're actually driving it down in, because it's still just two pieces of metal. They're going past each other, so you end up with a perfectly smooth piece on both sides, and it is strong enough to hold it until you can solder it or weld it. Some cases, this is how Tinker toys, the old sheet metal wind-up toys made back in the 20th century, they used slot and tab construction to put toys together. It was smooth enough that people didn't worry about kids getting themselves cut up on them. So that's a slot and tab tool, and they're very easy to make. Basically, it's sort of a funny shaped chisel. Okay, I'll hold it up. You see that one tab is strong enough to hold that together. Now, we have another tool here. It looks like a funny kind of end cutter, but what it really is, see, that made a slot, and if you can go from the other direction, get these things lined up. You've actually got a pass-through slot that you've made. I take my little modified knife here and I put it in there, and you can see it has gone through the slot. You say, well, what do you do with something like that? Well, one of the things you can do is, if you have another piece that needs to be secured or attached, you can cut a strip that is the same size as your slot, and now you have a band attached to the big piece, and if you want to hold it in place, you simply drive it down so that that tab is now anchoring the strip. See, I tapped it down so that it's not quite flush, but it got enough grab on that strip that that strip can't move now. So if you wanted to secure something, like say we wanted to hold this pencil on, I now have a strip that I can fold over, trim it, hold it in place. It's another construction method. And you see on the other side, there's the strip going through there. So these were sometimes used to do things like put wiring harnesses . But you can imagine all sorts of other uses for a little anchoring strip like that in a piece of sheet metal. Now say that you want to take something like a dime and put it on a piece of sheet metal. Well, one way to do that is to take the dime, put it where you want it, take a very sharp pencil and mark the outside of the dime so you know where the dime is. You take your little tab tool and you go inside the marked line, that as far as you want your tab to go, and you make the tab go outside the line of where the object is. And I'm going to put 3 tabs. Hold my dime in. Now you see I got 3 tabs, and I'm going to fold them out a little bit. I'm going to put my dime in there, fold them back down, now if I want to be a neat freak, there's all sorts of ways to tighten that up, make it look better. And I'm just going to tap it gently with my hammer. And you can see you've attached that dime mechanically. That's what it looks like on the other side. And how long did that take? And of course you can see, depending on how long you make the tabs, you can make the tab short so it's just barely over the rim, or you can make them quite long so they cover over and are more decorative. You could even roll those up with a chain link plier and make kind of a decorative end. Now, you can get really sneaky and combine some of these things together. So if you had your piece of copper and let's say we'll make a little tab here. I'm going to use my little knife again, make sure that I've got all the little burrs from the tab out. And then I'm going to take my tabbing tool here, and I'm going to make another tab. You see I have another tab, and I can take that tab, and that little slot that I made in the copper, and I can put the tab through the slot. Just slide it up in there. See how it comes through? I'm going to poke it down so it goes through the other side. Right like that. And then I can tap the tab down in the slot. Right there. You can see there's the tab, there's the slot on the other side. It's actually smooth. It's got reasonable mechanical strength. It's not quite, say, as strong as a pop rivet, but it's decorative, and if you're careful and align several of them at once, you can have multiple tabs and slots holding things together. And if you're really afraid that something's going to come apart, you can always run a little solder, silver solder, brazing, welding, whatever it is you need to secure it. But it's a very positive alignment, so it'll hold things together until you can get your solder or brazing or welding. And that's why it's been called the tinker toy or the slot and tab method of construction, because it's very much just sort of a tinker toy thing for light sheet metal. You can tinker with things as much as you want. I've put tin cans together with other tin cans. I've taken all sorts of sheet metal things. I haven't gotten around to making wind-up toys, but you can see this is a very useful technique, and the equipment is not that unusual. This kind of tool, I think this is an Exolite 903. You can buy those on the surplus market. These things you can just make for yourself. You could contact me. I'd be happy to make you as many of these in different sizes as you'd ever think you'd want. They're not that hard to make. So, that's today's Blacksmith Dictionary. Slot and tab construction tools, tinker toy tools, whatever you want to call them. Bye.